I have a sense of fulfillment because when I set out what I think we needed to do as an organization, I think looking back the last 2 years, I think we have achieved most of them. There is a long way to go, but I do believe we have made some good progress. Yeah, I really appreciate visions, and I am a vision-led person. But when I took up this role, I did not think that I am the one to define a vision as a leader, because I am one leader in a sea of many others. I might be holding the role as Secretary General, but that doesn't make me the most visionary person. So I truly believe that we had to co-create an idea together to define a future together with other leaders. And that future is not prescribed, it's not prescriptive, you know. It's aspirational. And in the journey to arrive at that aspiration, we ourselves as actors could change in the process, and even the aspiration, the destination itself could change. So this is what has happened. I really hesitated at the beginning because I don't believe in leadership as some kind of messianic, attribute. I believe in redistributive leadership. I believe in co-creation with everybody else, because everybody's perspective, story, and experience should be reflected in a vision for an organization like ActionAid. So I am happy I did not rush into talking about vision, but I think looking back, there is a lot that we have achieved together, and we continue to evolve. I took up this role as Secretary General at a time when we had a big crisis. I think that for those who are not in the eye of the storm, they need to know that in 2021, this organization could have disintegrated, or at least it could have moved in a direction that nobody would have known. You know, there were really huge contradictions within the organization, not just at the Global Secretariat, but the Global Secretariat was important because it's an important center. And in ActionAid, there's just not one center, but it's one of the important centers of influence and of coordination. So we went through a massive change. We had to cut down our budget by nearly half, our staff by nearly half. And so we were not in a stable situation. So working with everybody else, when I took over the reins of leadership, we were stuck with an organizational change process. And when the former Secretary General had to leave, then I had to pick up lots of the pieces. I was part of her team, so I knew a number of the difficulties we found ourselves in. So I was able to pick up these pieces, mobilized, and we were able to complete this process. So I think the first one is stabilizing that center. Was very, very important. And it took a bit of time. Actually, we completed this at the end of 2024. So change processes is not just about defining a particular timeline and after that you say we are done now, we can fly. No. I think these changes took a bit of time, but stabilizing that and completing that change process was significant. Without doing that, we would not be talking about any other successes. The second one was restoring a very constructive relationship between the leadership team in management and governance. So at the time we had this crisis, there was a near breakdown in the relationship between management and the board for various reasons. I am happy to say that this relationship is excellent now. We have very constructive, of course, the boundaries are clear between governance and management, but we are working together to resolve some of the most systemic challenges that the organization is facing. The international board and our governance as ActionAid is something that we take deep pride in, because it's part of our internationalization story. It's part of shifting decision-making space and power that we did in 2003. Many other organizations talk about shifting power now. We did this like 2 decades ago. And so our story is one in which we took central stage in ensuring that our governance is part and parcel of the transformation and the change we want to create in society. So stabilizing that and restoring a constructive relationship between management and board was really, really very important. The third one, I would say, was the establishment of the global leadership team. And many people might not fully appreciate how important this was. But I will tell you, without the global leadership team that we now have, I don't think any of the external engagements or the changes that ActionAid is now proud of could have happened. This is simply because there's a de facto situation in this organization where the global secretariat, where I sit, is less than 10% of the organization. 90% of the organization, in terms of budget, in terms of people, in terms of partners, in terms of programs, in terms of interface with communities, is really at country level. But the problem was that countries were not decisively part of leading the federation. I mean, we had iterations of the global leadership team before, like the federation leadership team we used to have a decade or so ago. But the global leadership team has gone farthest in terms of really giving leadership and authority to countries. So out of a global leadership team of about...
this one, is it the structure which is different this time, or the whole essence and the culture?
It's the essence. It's not just the structure, because this global leadership team is part of our structure now. But setting up the global leadership team goes beyond structure. It's about people. One of the most fundamental tasks of a leader is to build a team, is to create a team that can work together, that can lead together. So I think this is what we have achieved with regards to the global leadership team. Mm-hmm. And I would like to just highlight a few things that I believe are so crucial that the global leadership team did. It helped the federation through discussions with countries to agree on a vision of transformation. The global leadership team, together with country directors, came up with a vision of transformation that has 3 important elements. One is to transform ActionAid into a rooted campaigning organization with a strong constituency base. It's not about ActionAid being an international development organization or we're an international charity. We want to be a popular, rooted organization that people find valuable for their struggles and for their circumstances. The other connected elements to this rooted campaigning vision for ActionAid is we also want to transform the organization to become more feminist, more decolonial, and more anti-racist. We name these things. To be honest, those who have known ActionAid for a while, these words you don't take for granted. 20 years ago, the F word was not, you couldn't mention it openly in ActionAid. So it's not a mean achievement. Talking about racism openly, is not something that we should take for granted. And then, of course, to accompany these 2 elements that I've just explained, the bread and butter of this organization is its programs and its impact that it creates on the ground. So we also made it really important to focus on creation of transformative programs that make a difference in people's lives. So this was the other element that the global leadership team came up with. And finally, it was about growing our resource ambition. So how do we fund what we say we would do? And how do we, raise resources and redistribute it in this complex organization in a fair way? So by the end of last year, the end of 2024, we had achieved a lot with a new and final strategy implementation framework. This was significant. It articulates everything we need to do and become to remain relevant in the next few years. We were able, after 8 years of failure, we were able to agree on a new resource allocation framework. Previously, it was called RAF, which was rough in its own way. But now we came up with a fantastic name, not just a name, an acronym, but also it really reflects the intention that we have. So RAF was replaced last year, and it was approved by the Assembly by another framework called FAIR. FAIR standing for fundraising and allocation of international resources. This acknowledges that all the resources ActionAid raises, whether it's from the global north or the global south, whether it's from the majority world or is collectively generated money under our brand. So we should share it fairly. And then the fair itself does make it very clear how these resources are distributed. Now, might sound simple, but we could not agree on this for the last 6, 7, 8 years. So for us to be able to cross the line last year was a significant achievement. Now, all these things I've talked about, Javeria, since you asked about achievements, have all been internal things. And before anybody raises that as a problem, I want to explain why it is important. And I have really a story from the past. My grandmother, you must have heard this story. She used to make pots, and I used to try to imitate her, making pots, and I failed often. I failed, and she told me, one day, after the best pots are made from the inside out. This is a profound lesson in organizational development, because if you don't have a coherent internal, you cannot make a big difference in the world outside. You will always be pulled back inside. So I think we are in a place where I'm comfortable with the inside. Not everything is resolved, because a lot of this keep adapting. We need to keep adapting and changing. But we achieved most of the internal changes that we desired. So it was not an accident that we focused a lot the last 2 years on the internal. But in 2023, 24, we also now started to feature a lot more strongly with external engagement. So I'm deeply proud about the global campaign that we launched. It's called Fund Our Future, but in a nutshell, it's about ActionAid working with a lot of its allies to shift resources through our campaigns. We should shift resources from climate crisis inducing investments such as fossil fuels and industrial agriculture into alternatives that are renewable, that are in harmony with the planet Earth. So this is very important. We launched this in September 2023, and it's an initiative that is about what we do in the world, because climate crisis is a major burning platform in the world. If we don't deal with this, we don't have too much time. It's such an urgent issue. It will lead to lots of migration, population pressures, resource competition. All the things we fear will be accelerated. Inequality, poverty will be accelerated with the climate crisis. So this campaign, we launched it in 2023, September. It was an excellent external process. Then the last one I would talk about is mainly from our policy and communications team. In the last 2 years, we have seen ActionAid becoming more visible in the external spaces, whether you're talking about the Conference of Parties that talks about, the UN commitments to climate, the Loss and Damage Fund that we contributed to with other civil society organizations. It was created 2 years back. We have done a lot of really groundbreaking research around debt and climate, the vicious cycle and the connection between the debt crisis and the climate crisis. Our policy team did excellent research in that regard. Recently, they launched a similar, policy brief around who owes who. And this is so important because for a long time, we just think countries in the global south are the ones that are in debt and we owe the global north all this money. But this report challenges that narrative completely, because if you look at historical debts like climate debts, many, many more times the north owes the global south. So this is a conversation that we need to spend a bit more time on. So anyway, lots of researches and policy spaces where we have been part of. We critiqued the IMF 2 years back. IMF was celebrating 50 years of austerity. We released the report in Morocco. The first meeting of the IFIs that took place in Africa was in Morocco a couple of years back. We launched this 50 years of austerity of the IMF. So all of these have been important opportunities externally that ActionAid is trying to reclaim, and the journey continues. So I'm really proud about both the internal and the external efforts that we are making. I've visited many countries because being formerly a country director before, I really know that the heartbeat of ActionAid, it beats in the countries and in the communities. I think the first country I visited and, helped me to kind of rekindle a bit of what I used to do in the past. Before I joined the Global Secretariat was Nepal. And Nepal was so important because this was when, on the invitation of Sujita, our country director there, we launched, it was one of the first countries where we launched the climate justice campaign called Fund Our Future. And the moment that really touched me the most, in addition to looking at young people and artists reflecting on the climate crisis in pictures and drawings, was, the human ring that we created around a particular place in Kathmandu. So this was a memorable moment. And I spent, an hour and a half in a media house that ActionAid Nepal had organized with an interesting interview. All of these are online. So this was one memorable one. Then I also visited Indonesia last year. And initially, it was a visit that we thought was going to be internal. But then, of course, in ActionAid, you cannot complete any country visit without, meeting and going to communities where we work. And so it was a very moving moment to relate with young people whose education we were investing in. It was amazing to see what ActionAid Indonesia, called Yapika in their own context, was doing to raise money for our mission around the world, but also for the people in Indonesia. So that was memorable. I also had the opportunity on the invitation of Eva, our country director in Greece. It's called ActionAid Hellas, attending a really important forum. It's called the Delphi Economic Forum, like thousands of people attending this meeting. And so I was interacting. And civil society is a small part of this, thousands, maybe less than 5%. So interacting with, it was an opportunity to interact with people from other disciplines, the finance sector, banking, private sector, military, So it was a unique space. It was really a unique space that I went to. But top for me, Javeria, was my trip to Australia and the Pacifics in Vanuatu. Of course, a wonderful time going to Australia for the first time, but it was such a rich program that the team in Australia put together that I had never felt in my 12 years in ActionAid. Such a wonderful combination of internal and external engagements, the way the team did. And the highlight when I went there for nearly 2 weeks was in Vanuatu, where I had the the honor of being part of the launch of Women Talk Together Federation. And we had this march with indigenous women. We had a march really to celebrate a journey of nearly 8 years to bring together a federation of 9,000 women in a country of 300,000 people. That's significant in a country that is one of the most vulnerable to climate crisis, and for them to lead women with disability, rural women who are fighting and pushing back patriarchy in the most amazing ways. One is ActionAid is not the easiest of organizations. There are so many different interests. We are not a centralized organization. Each and every country in the devolved nature in which we are has their span of control and their leadership. Sometimes the interest between different countries in which we work are contradictory. Each country has their own story, their own context, and so sometimes there are lots of interest to manage. But always we need to take a positive outlook. It's not about one country fighting against the other. Everybody's coming on the table with good faith, in good faith. Even when we disagree, you can see that we are disagreeing because we have competing views about how to achieve what we all desire to achieve. But it takes time. It takes time. And this sometimes has drained a lot of energy. The pace of change internally and sometimes externally is affected by this need to balance different interests. But to be very honest with you, it's a pain worth taking, because this is the reality of our diversity. You cannot just adopt a dictatorial style and say, this is the direction we are moving, I've defined a vision. You will, like the saying goes, if you want to go fast, move alone. If you want to go far, move with others. I think ActionAid has taken the second one. It has its own problems, but it also has positive things. So anyway, the pace of change can be quite frustrating and draining in terms of balancing interests, but no regret. The second one, the second challenge that comes to my mind is that the external environment is changing so much faster than we can cope with. So we talk in ActionAid about being agile, being responsive to context, which we do, but the pace of change is significant. This year, as we speak, this year, you can't believe, but it's just coming to the end of March, and I feel like what has happened in the world is like we're in November. So the pace of change, and I give you a concrete example. In 2024, we completed our unrestricted, the restricted funding strategy, which means raising money from institutional donors. And we had some very clear targets that was based on the context that we were analyzing at the time. And guess what? 3 months into the strategy, there are all these dramatic changes about USAID, about the EU, and about many other donors. And all of a sudden, some of the targets that we talked about are obsolete. They are unachievable. We need to adapt. But instead of going through another process of, re-strategizing, we just want to make the tweaks that are necessary and keep moving. We don't have the luxury of endless processes, because of this. So anyway, the pace of change externally is a lot faster than we had envisaged, and for us to cope. So that means we have to be even more agile. Decentralized decision, to those that need to make the decisions as fast as possible, because that's just how we will survive in this really difficult environment. The last challenge, I would say, is one that I have felt personally, but it's also a challenge that the sector, I think, faces, our wider sector. It's a strange one, but I think the crisis of political correctness. There is so much happening around us that we sometimes fear to anger people, to make people upset. I call this the crisis of political correctness. It's robbing us of our authentic selves. We are always self-censoring. Instead of being bold and radical, which is what we want to believe in, this is what we profess in a lot of our documents, I think this is a big issue. We are on the right side of history. And so no matter what challenge you encounter every single day, think about what difference you can make by being positive, by being optimistic, by sharing and caring for others. Don't wait for the biggest of changes to celebrate. Every single day for some people is a miracle. So let's celebrate whatever difference we are making every single day in people's lives. But as leaders, I think my final word is also an invitation to all of our staff to hold us accountable. We, as leaders, sit in a privileged place, but we also carry a weight of responsibility, and our own staff need to know that they should hold us accountable where we are not going right, speak out, so that we can improve and reflect all of your aspirations. But I'm deeply, deeply proud of all the work that we are doing around the world. And it's a deep honor to be in this role. And make a modest contribution to changing the world that we all hold as our common heritage. So thanks a lot, and enjoy yourselves.